This episode is another re-release of a past Eager to Know. This time it is with Uncommon Grounds owner Helen Cameron. Uncommon Ground is a restaurant in Chicago. This is a fantastic interview. I have not listened to it since I edited it 6 years ago, and it's really good. She is a wonderful guest. She is very articulate. She answers my questions beautifully. And I think the conversation is very helpful for people that are potentially encountering challenges or trying something new and going on a new adventure professionally, creatively, or on a business standpoint. It is important to note that this was recorded 6 years ago, so we do mention an event that obviously has already passed. A little update, the location that we are talking about, at the time of this recording, they had two locations. One was in Edgewater, which is mostly what we were talking about, and they had a Lakeview location. The Edgewater location has since been closed and the building has been demolished and they are building condos there. So that is an interesting update. Maybe I'll follow up with Helen and find out what is going on. I haven't spoken to her since we did this interview, but this is a really great interview and I hope you all enjoy it.
Driving to my studio every day, I pass a restaurant with a visible rooftop farm right in Chicago's Edgewater neighborhood. And every time I drive by it, I think, a rooftop farm, what an amazing thing. When I finally visited Uncommon Ground, I realized there was even more. Not only is it a successful restaurant with a rooftop farm, it's a live music venue, an art space, an organic brewery. There was just a lot of interesting things there. My conversation with Helen Cameron, its founder, quickly revealed the character traits guiding the creation of these unique elements of their business: visualization, eagerness to try new things, willingness to take calculated risks. All of these traits have enabled them to grow ideas into amazing things.
Uncommon Ground, rooftop farm, two locations, beehives, organic brewery. So you have a lot going on. This started from something very small. So this is making me have a lot of questions because this was a lot of creativity, a lot of creation to go from where you started to where you are now. So can you tell me a little bit about where you started?
Well, Mike and I started Uncommon Ground in 1991. The first step was an espresso bar in the Century Mall, which is at Broadway and Clark and Diversey there, where it all converges. And that's how we began our journey, with something very small. We had no investors. We had no savings. So we started a really tiny business.
Now, how small, what was like the square footage of this original thing?
Well, it was on a rolling cart. It had a double unit espresso machine on it, a really big, heavy machine. And then it had eaves that you could flip up so that you could put, jars of cookies and, muffins and all that kind of stuff. So it was sort of just a coffee bar with like cookies and muffins and, snack type things in the Century Mall. And that's how we started.
So does that mean it was on like the floor of the mall?
Yes, it was kind of in the...
Like a cart?
Yes, a cart, like a food cart.
You started as a cart.
Yes, we did.
That is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And when you started with your cart, I mean, what did you have an intention, or were you just focusing on having a cart?
Well, we left a rather large positions. Mike was the food and beverage director at a small hotel downtown, and I was the executive chef at the time. And we had done that for a few years, and we really wanted to do our own business. So we figured that the cart system would be sort of a beginning and then sort of a means to being able to progress to hopefully at some point a cafe, and then kind of into restaurant world, which is pretty much, what
you did
made happen. Yeah, it just evolved very slowly. But we did it, without investors. We did it with just continually growing and reinvesting what we made in our company.
Now, one of the things about your story that I find very interesting
is, in addition to it being about business success, you are growing a business that adheres to your values.
Absolutely.
And that's incredible. Now, was that something that you knew you would always do from the beginning? Or like how did the two come together? Like the values and the business, were they, can you tell me about that story?
That's a really great question. Well, first of all, a lot of this happens because Mike and I have a really incredible partnership. And we have always intuitively followed, making things happen the way we think they should be. So, once we kind of got the coffee cart rolling and we realized, okay, we need no more. We were running a hotel and now it's this tiny thing. And we found this space and at 1214 West Grace, and we both walked into it. And while it was in rough shape and, a little bit off the beaten path, it was in a good area. And we both really, in our imaginations, could feel the potential of this space.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it sort of happened naturally for us. We just sort of went with a sort of flow of how we saw things needing to be.
Okay.
And we kind of have that thing together. It's really a cool thing. It's great to have a partner like that.
Okay, meaning you both kind of are comfortable going from the gut.
Yeah.
And it sounds like your guts are kind of in sync with each other.
Yeah, lots of guts and lots of seat of the pants learning.
Okay.
Like just you learn as you go. You make stuff happen. If it doesn't work the way you were hoping it would, you look at the situation. We're good problem solvers, right? We're very creative that way. Like we look at things and we're like, I really want to do this. Okay, well, how are we going to do it? What if we did this? What if we did that? And then you try things. And then sometimes they're really great and all you have to do is tweak them a little bit. And sometimes you try things and you're like, yeah, no, that was kind of silly. Let's move on to something else, and you progress that way. And sometimes certain things will carry you a certain way for a time, and then they've kind of outlived their usefulness, and then you move on to, the next step. You go up the next step of the ladder.
Okay. So I think I'm getting a picture of why you have been able to go from a cart to where you are now. It's starting to flush itself out for me. And it sounds like you kind of go with the flow, go with your gut. It also sounds like you are not afraid of trying new things from what you just said. And it sounds like you're also not afraid of changing direction and backing out if something's not working.
Oh, absolutely. At one point we had 2 espresso bars going, but those are such tiny businesses and they require a lot of attention. Meantime, we had this cafe up and running and we realized, you know what? These 2 things have gotten us to a certain point, but now they're almost a detriment because we really need to focus on the bigger picture, which was the cafe. And so we made a decision. Okay, this was great, got us to where we want to go. And now we're going to stop doing that and we're going to shift and go this way and put all our energy and creativity into that and build it. But we like to brainstorm. We like ideas and then coming up with like interesting things to do, ways to engage. I mean, we're uncommon ground. So it's a lot of thinking outside the box, right? There's no other restaurant that has a certified organic rooftop farm plus, a certified organic brewery. Plus it's a venue. We have music at 2 locations almost every night of the week. And it's an art gallery. I change art there regularly, as you know. So, it's a place where we want to build community, but we want to have creativity with that. We want to have fun with it. Like, this is my life. This is what I'm doing for my life. And if that's the deal, if I'm spending this much time at work, well, then it better darn well be something magnificent, you know? Like,
I mean, I would say if this is your life, you have a very exciting, diverse life because, as you said, there's a lot of different things going on from a creativity standpoint, business standpoint, artistic standpoint, which is really just amazing that you have created this business and this life for yourselves. Obviously, doing all of this, you have to have an entrepreneurial mindset which we talked about. Would you say that you always had that and you were aware of it? Or would you say that it developed, or was it something that was activated by being in this environment?
Honestly, I think it's at the core of my being. And
so if you ended up doing, like you were working at a hotel, was it?
yes.
So if you stayed there, do you think that, how would that have played out? These parts of your personality that have allowed you to be successful?
Well, the lucky thing about having that position in the hotel is that my husband was my boss.
Okay.
And so I was able to have that open creativity in the way I ran the restaurant, and I was able to create specials and, events and things. So I was able to use that space as a teaching ground, to hone my skills, so that when I eventually am doing this for myself, I have a grasp on how it's done and how to do it successfully. So that was great, because in that opportunity, I had that entrepreneurial ability that maybe some other jobs may not have, won't give you.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of things that you are actively doing right now with the rooftop farm, first rooftop organic farm in the United States,
yep.
which is amazing. I know you now have an organic brewery. There's a lot of, and you kind of alluded to this idea of thinking of ideas and then making them happen.
Right.
And I'm the same way. Like the process of having an idea in my head and then working hard to see it to realization, I think that is one of the most exciting things that you can do. And, I'm an artist, but it doesn't happen for me just in paintings.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the same way with cooking. I'm the same way with my podcast. Like this podcast was just an idea that I had, and then I created it.
Exactly.
And isn't that amazing that we can do that?
It's so much fun.
It's a lot of fun.
It's really fun to realize something.
Yeah. But there's a lot of, there's a lot associated with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's taking risks, it's failure, it's, all of that. Can you tell me about that process for you, of having an idea and then realizing it?
Well, the rooftop farm is definitely one of those situations. I grew up in Chicago on the West Side, and my family always grew a lot of food in the backyard. And my mom was in the food business. My father was gourmand. So, I grew up with good food, and much of it we grew. We had fruit trees and bushes. We had all kinds of vegetables, especially the tomatoes. Like as a child growing up with these fantastic heirloom tomatoes that, on those hot summer nights, and at the time we didn't have air conditioning, I would get up in the middle of the night and I would go grab a tomato out of the garden.
And where was this? Was this in
West
the suburbs?
side of Chicago.
Really?
4324 West Thomas Street,
Wow.
on the other side of Humboldt Park.
Now, did your whole neighborhood do this, or were you the outliers? Were you the gardeners in the neighborhood?
A lot of people grew food in that neighborhood at the time. It was European and Eastern European,
Okay.
Polish, Russian, German, kind of a mix of people in that area. And a lot of people grew their own food in their backyards.
Yeah, I think gardening is. I actually had a guest on Eager to Know who's currently now a landscape architect, but we talked all about him growing up with his grandfather's farm, and it's just amazing. And I think I think gardening is great.
Yeah,
but,
well, growing up with that,
yeah,
that was very deeply rooted in me. First of all, at the time, people weren't using all these horrible chemicals that will make you sick and possibly kill you. And we composted. I kind of grew up with organic gardening, and as a kid, when you're young, I think you're just really attached to the earth. The thing of growing a seed and taking care of a plant, and then being able to realize the fruits of your labor.
Oh yeah.
Those were really great lessons to me when I was young, but also I think I've had a very healthy life because I ate food that was really nutritious.
Yeah.
And of the season, and full of that flavor and joy, when you're eating it. And those tomatoes especially was just a big thing for me growing up. And so when Mike and I got married and we, started our journey together, we eventually bought our first home. And I was so psyched because I'm thinking, oh, now I can grow tomatoes in my own backyard. But lo and behold, the neighbor south of us blocked the majority of the sunlight.
Aww.
And so I couldn't really grow tomatoes in my backyard, which was kind of a big disappointment.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, it was still a fantastic garden, and I really enjoyed it.
But it was not full sun.
Not full sun.
Okay.
So I would have to go to the farmers markets to get my good tomatoes.
Okay.
And I would have to wait for a proper farmer market to show up in Chicago several years after we opened Uncommon Ground. I mean, I would go to farmers markets, but they were selling the food that you could pick up at the Lake Street markets that was coming in from all over the world. It wasn't coming from a local farm. It was coming from a farm, and I kind of grew up later in life. I lived sort of on the Indiana-Michigan border. So I was accustomed to just going to farm stands or going to the farm and picking the fruit or whatever. And, and then we also grew stuff out there as I got older. So I was always surrounded by good local food. And then I come to Chicago and I want that for my restaurant. And I realize I can't get that until the Green City Market opened, because the Green City Market was the one that really established, like, okay, if you're selling food here, you need to be a farmer that's from the area.
Okay.
And then you can start developing those relationships, which was great for us at Uncommon Ground. It made me so happy. I connected with so many farmers. But to be able to get a locally grown tomato, I would have to sort of go out of my way for that.
So were you operating the restaurant without locally grown produce for a while until you were able to? In the very beginning you were, and then at some point you were able to get it. Yeah. But then something else happened, and I was doing my research and I saw an interview with you, and you talked about the first time you went to the roof of your current building. Yeah. Can you tell me tell me that story?
Yeah. So, knowing how I feel about tomatoes, right? So we were looking at this building on the corner of Devon and Glenwood and thinking about buying it and putting our second restaurant in there. And it was a sunny day in February. We wanted to kind of explore the building a little bit more and see what the condition was like of the roof and various other things to see if we wanted to take this on. And we brought a ladder with us so we could check out the roof. And so Mike held it for me. I climbed up there. And as soon as my eyes cleared the parapet and I saw this wide open 4,000 square foot rooftop with one of those silver linings.
Yep.
The first thing that popped into my head was a ginormous tomato, red ripe tomato. And then I looked down at Mike. I was like, holy shit, we could grow food up here. And I remember looking down at him. I still have this image in my head because he's holding the ladder and he's looking up and I'm looking down, yelling this at him. And he's just like pleasantly like, wow, okay, yeah, we'll grow food up there. And so he joins me up on the roof and we walked around, and we had really been at that point also involved in all kinds of sustainability, ideals. And so the other thing that we agreed to is if we decided to do that project, that it was going to have a working farm on the roof and it was going to have solar panels.
So, but those ideas came after you, like when you peeked over and saw that roof, you weren't thinking about a farm until you saw it. Is that
exactly
correct? Okay, so this just came to you.
The picture, first it was the tomato, and then it was, holy shit, we can grow food up here. And then the next thing in my mind was like, we should have a farm on the roof. That was like the next, it was thought, yes, that's the right thing to do. And then that's what we did.
Okay.
There really wasn't any further discussion about it. We just made up our minds. And then when we decided to try to buy the building and do this project, all that came with it.
Okay. So running a restaurant and starting a restaurant is enough work.
Yes.
To do something like this, and you're the first, which means you can't call up people and ask how to do it.
No, we had to figure it out.
You had to figure this out. So you had to be really committed to this. And then there's also like the financial aspect of it, because I'm sure that is the financial component of that is not something that's generally factored into opening a restaurant location.
No, not at all. Or running one
Yeah.
on a daily basis.
Yeah. So there was just
Yeah.
that is so there was a lot of failures, I assume, and struggles. Can you just tell me about the difficulty in doing that?
Huh. Well, I mean, definitely it was a big challenge, and there was some struggling to maneuver it to where we want it. But I think, at that point, we had a lot of support from the community. Once they found out we were interested.
Meaning the people in the neighborhood?
Yes, in doing the project. And then it's funny how the universe kind of tosses things your way and helps you. We were able to get TIF funds.
Okay.
So that was also, a bit of a struggle, dealing with that situation because it's a whole other arena of, building something. But it's funding, and that really helped us figure out how to make it happen, because in order to put that kind of weight on a roof, the building has to
be reinforced.
Hold
sure.
it. Well, it turns out the basement in this place was, it was 110 years old. So Mike couldn't stand up straight in the basement. So one of the big deals about making this decision is both of us are standing in the basement, and I'm like, you realize that if we do this project, we're going to have to dig this basement out because we need the space. We need the space in the basement for our business.
Okay, so that was like another unexpected challenge that you had to deal with.
Yeah. And, I'm like, you realize that, right? And he looked at me, he's like, fuck, because it's 4,000 square feet. I mean, it's a big building. So we kind of went into the decision to do this project with eyes wide open in terms of understanding what the project needed to make it successful. And, the basement was one of it. And then the basement was the precursor to then being able to put the farm on the roof, because we expanded the footers of the building and we made, the bearing wall systems stronger. And then we also made the parapets where, in order to have this rooftop farm, we put steel beams in that are stretched across the building, and they're held by the bearing walls and, and the parapets. And then there's a deck that's built on top of that. So the farm isn't actually sitting on the roof of the building. We've created a deck.
So this was obviously no small task. This
was a big project.
This was a big
project.
A big
110-year-old building. The prior owners left it in very bad disrepair. I think they thought the building was going to be purchased by a developer that was going to tear it down.
Oh, okay.
So when they shut their business down, they just shut the lights off and locked it up and walked out the door, and all the food and everything was left there. And they did that in November. We saw the building in February. So there was just decaying. It was, it was just a nasty space to clean up.
Okay.
But, of course, had great bones. It had a lot of the things that we wanted for restaurant number 2. And things that we didn't even put on our wish list, because who would think to put that on a list for a restaurant in Chicago? We wanted to own the building. That was our number one prerequisite. We wanted to have a stage, a bigger venue type space, bigger kitchen, fireplace, outdoor dining. It's the basic things that really make a restaurant shine. But we didn't ask for, in our wish list, we didn't ask for a parking lot, and we didn't ask for a rooftop that was capable of being used,
Well, it sounds like the universe provided it.
It just had so much going for it.
Yeah.
We decided, you know what, we're up for the challenge. We can do this. You just have to hire the right people to help you make these things happen, and, play by the rules of the TIF situation. And, we closed on June 21st on the building, and we opened the restaurant in early December for business. So it didn't take us long. We got a lot of work done in a short period of time to get it up and at 'em.
Did you have the farm when you opened?
No.
So what?
No, but the deck, because by the time we opened, it was winter time. So we had the deck built and we had the solar panels up there. And so that gave us the time to then find people to work with to figure out, okay, now how do we design this farm? No one has done this before. How do we make it so that we have a super productive, tiny space, that really can produce a lot of food, but can be used as an educational space. And, when Mike was like, yeah, people could eat up here. And I'm like, no, I don't want this to be a dining space. I want it to be a working farm where people can come and visit and learn. And, we can have maybe like cocktails and appetizers or something like that, but like not a seated formal dining space. It's really meant to be, a growing space.
Yeah, I mean,
growing whatever it is we need to grow space.
Yep, and I got the tour. And
yeah.
It was amazing, and thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We talked earlier about the fact that you've been developing and evolving this business in line with these values that you have.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me what those are?
Well, our vision overall is to nourish community and nurture nature. I think those 4 words really encompass the whole idealism.
Okay.
And then uncommon ground. If you think about our evolution, I mean, we started out as a coffee cart, uncommon ground. Then we became a cafe, a venue, an art space, and a sort of a different uncommon ground, And then as it grew, and we really, became involved in sustainability and really thinking about what's happening with our climate. What can we as a restaurant do? What can we do to improve our local economy? We've always really been big on, supporting local businesses that are like-minded, or supporting, the local farmers, trying to relocalize our food systems, which would make our economy stronger and probably keep us healthier because we're eating, fresher food that hopefully doesn't have as much chemical content on it, So and the first time I found out about like RBGH in milk, I completely freaked out when I understood what that was about. And then I'm thinking,
is that a hormone?
It's a growth hormone, bovine growth hormone. And
is that given to the cows by humans?
Yes, it's given to the cows by humans, and it makes the females, who are producing the milk, produce way more milk, but at a cost to the animal because, in my mind, what happens is it makes their udders really swell. I mean, it's more milk, and it's painful for them.
But what does that do to us if we're drinking it?
Well, the hormones pass through to the dairy products that we consume that have that in there. And now, girls are having their periods before they're 10 and boys are developing breasts. So, so to me, but just the cruelty to the animal freaks me out, first and foremost, because it's like, that's something that I've really rail against now is misery meat and poisonous produce. Because if an animal is miserable, then what kind of energy are you getting from it when you're consuming it?
Yeah.
And then whatever chemicals they're feeding this creature, GMOs, Roundup, whatever it is they're consuming, well, first of all, corn isn't a food that's meant for cows. Cows are meant to eat grass.
Right.
That's what they were designed to do.
Yeah.
And so by feeding them corn, it makes them sick. So now they have to give them antibiotics and all this stuff. So it's creating just this really bad situation for the animals. But, the end result is we're dealing with it when we consume that.
Yeah.
And it's starting to become a really major, major issue. So we have to get the antibiotics out of our food stream.
Yeah, I feel like this could be another whole podcast.
Yes,
I want to have I'm part of a running group, and one of the women that I run with is a nutritionist. She's studying for her doctorate in nutrition, and I want to have her come in. But that is I have a lot of questions.
That's a big conversation.
On this. So maybe I'll pull you. You can come back and be part of that conversation.
Yeah. Well, I'm just concerned about making sure that the types of things that I buy, to use within my restaurant are the best ingredients I can find. Where when I go to sleep at night, my conscience is good. Like I'm not feeding people all this stuff that I think is really bad for you. And bad for animal. I love animals, but I'm also an omnivore.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to eat them, I want to eat an animal that had a natural life, that that was cared for, that was in the sunshine. If it's a cow, I only eat grass-fed beef. So, and because I think that in the end, maybe I don't need to eat so much of that, but when I do, it's something that's actually really going to nourish me. And the animal, this is the cycle of life, and the animals are part of that. But, they shouldn't be miserable their whole life on our behalf. I mean, that's not right. To me, that's just completely unethical. So I want to feel good about what I'm doing. I want to feel good about what we put on the plate. And are we perfect? We're always trying, but in this world right now, it's really hard because there's not a whole lot of information. You just don't always know what's in your food.
Yeah. Now, is that something that a lot of restaurants do? Or because I assume that purchasing food that falls within that criteria that you just mentioned, that's a lot of extra work, and I assume extra expense. Is that something that is a lot of work, or is it? Are there natural?
It requires effort. It requires you got to. You have to have your head in the space of trying to understand what's happening in the world that you are presiding over. So yeah, I mean, I read a lot of newsletters, and I'm connected with a lot of different organizations that are like-minded. And, I'm always learning. I'm always trying to learn about what's going on in the world, and especially in regards to food and sustainability and food safety and those types of things. And but, as a chef, you want things to taste good, and you want them to be beautiful. And so how does that happen? Well, when you grow your own, you pretty much, there it is. Everything that's gone into that creature. You're picking at the peak of ripeness, and you're preparing it in such a way that your guests can enjoy. And there's nothing better than that, and it doesn't need to be a big complicated thing,
And plus you can put fresh nasturtiums on everything, because you had a lot of nasturtiums.
We have a lot of nasturtiums right
and
now.
And pansies.
Yes.
Edible pansies, which I didn't know that pansies were edible.
So they're called Johnny Jump Ups.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the many lessons I got when I went and saw your location. You mentioned community. So tell me about that. I know that you do events. Tell me other ways that you embrace the community.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, there's our immediate community at Lakeview or Edgewater. We're really involved in a lot of happenings in both areas. But to me, it's really about sort of building a community within, building a connection to the people around us, and providing them a place of comfort, a place where they feel like they're going to get a good meal, a place where they can enjoy music and art and hanging out with friends, maybe not spending so much time on the phone and having conversation. And then if there's any way that I can use my space to help educate people a little bit about sustainability or, better food or better beer. I try to do that in subtle ways. At our Clark Street location, we've got an outdoor cafe area that's fenced in by food growing, and now suddenly people are like, oh, wow, look at how beautiful that, oh, that's tomato. Oh, I didn't know you could, oh, and then the next thing you know, people are like, what are those things that you're growing those in? Where can you get those? I would like, and so it's like one of those things where it's like you try to form connections because we're like-minded.
Yeah.
We try to make sure the menu is balanced so that there's something for everyone. And right now, with so many people having so many dietary issues, predominantly it's vegetarian and vegan, which half of our menu is easily that. Could be modified from vegetarian to vegan, but also there's people who don't do gluten, and then there's other allergy type things that are going on. So we really try to make sure that when you come to dine with us, you're going to have a nice meal and you're going to have something that you can eat if you have a situation like that going on. And I think that's really important too. It's like you want to nourish people when they come to your restaurant. It's not about making a buck. It's about I have 120 employees, so that's a community in itself. So, to keep a small economy going like that. So it's community, but it's across so many different, aspects of, your daily universe.
So can you tell me about the harvest dinner that's coming up?
Yeah, so this harvest dinner is something we started soon after we got, the farm reliably up and running after the first few years. And when we're now able to harvest about 1,000 pounds plus of food, from our system. And what we do is we choose a date in August, and this year it's going to be August 28th, which is a Wednesday night, and we're going to have a farm dinner. And the dinner is basically starts out with a cocktail. Usually we'll work together with a local distiller and create some delicious cocktail with some ingredients from the farm. And then there will be a trio of appetizers, and then we'll go and sit down at a table with a family-style meal. And that meal will also include our fresh brewed organic beer from Green Star Brewing. So it's kind of like the ultimate slow dinner because we start planning for this basically in February when we decide what our farm plan is going to be. And, then the majority of the food that will be on the plate or that you are drinking is going to be something that we produced in one way or another.
In what location is this?
And this is at our Devon location. So,
okay.
Yeah,
in Edgewater.
Edgewater.
And what's the date for this?
It's going to be on Wednesday, August 28th at 6 p.m.
Okay. And now, is this something you buy tickets for?
Yes, I'm actually actively working on the menu for this right now. We're really looking at what's going to be coming up from the farm that we're harvesting so that we can really, get our peak ingredients and as much, we're going to have to hoard some of our ingredients and wait for that night. So it takes me a little while, but I'm working on the menu now. And once we've kind of got that organized, we will set up sales of brown paper tickets.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, I will definitely be attending.
Oh, I would love to have you.
Yay.
Yay.
A quote that I read from you that made me really happy was you said something to the effect of that we have the power to solve problems. And that sounded like something that would be very important for your journey.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I feel like reminding yourself that is really important when we're faced with problems, when we're feeling overwhelmed, and reminding ourselves that we actually do have the power to solve the problems that are presented to us. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. In our early years, we didn't sort of have a plan laid out. We were sort of playing things by ear and growing and then reacting to that. It was more reactionary to where we were at any given point in time. And then it came to a space where we decided to expand for the first time. And that was awesome. We needed to do it, but I threw my entire body and soul into that process. And there was probably a period of 6 months where I worked every day, at least 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
Like no downtime, no vacations, no days off, just barely kind of, between Mike and I, and we did a lot of the build out ourselves because we couldn't really afford to, pay somebody to do a lot of things that we might have been able to do. For instance, I sanded the floors, kind of thing with that machine, So, we did a lot of crazy stuff, and I just about killed myself. I mean, I really was on the brink of complete exhaustion. And I, at a certain point, I realized that I needed a timeout, which I did take. But I also realized that if this is my company and I am the entrepreneur, then if I don't like the way something is going, if I don't like the direction we're taking, or if I don't like the way my life is at the moment because I'm just overworked, the only person that's going to fix that is me.
Yep.
It's like if I have to realize that, and then I have to say to myself, well, I have the power to change so that I make it better, whatever the case may be.
Being an entrepreneur
Yeah.
is a way that it sounds like you probably will really learn that.
Yes.
But ultimately, it's applicable to anybody, no matter what you're doing.
We all have that, but we also need to be mindful to really understand if there's something that needs to be changed. Or, sometimes you're unhappy, but you don't really know what it is that's bugging you sometimes, or like, oh, if I change this, then this would make it all much better. Sometimes you don't go to that place right away because it's not something you realize. But once you figure it out, then you can say to yourself, well, I've identified the situation and now I have the power to fix it.
Yeah.
So you really kind of have to identify what it is that needs, your problem solving skills. And, and so much of what, how Mike and I go about things is we picture things. I mean, I see things in my head. I see what's going to happen in my head.
You see that tomato.
I do. I see it, and then that's where I'm going. It's as simple as that for us. It's kind of crazy. I mean, I still think, you know what, if it had been any other man and I'm up there going, holy shit, I could grow food up here, how many people are going to be like, yeah, sure, go ahead, follow that dream, hun. Go. That's kind of a crazy idea, but go. And he was just like in it with me the second that it came out of my mouth. So, and we do that for each other. And what's really cool about how we have things kind of set up is our skill sets are very different.
Okay.
We have sort of the same mindset, but our skill sets are different. So we've always just kind of operated on this divide and conquer thing where it's like, okay, well, you do what you do and I'll do what I do. And we'll kind of make sure we're connected in the middle so that we're directing the thing together. But that's kind of really what our process has been.
That sounds like a good match.
It's teamwork. Yeah, all the way.
So do you have a couple suggestions or tips or guidelines that you can give people that are listening to this to help them move things forward in their business and their lives in a more creative manner?
Well, something that has served me well is sort of connecting to my intuition. And I think that when you have time to think, I need to process. And I like systems. So to me, it's like first I have to sort of process an idea, and then my mind will create the system of how to actually make it happen. So it kind of starts with the imagination, but then it goes through this metamorphosis of like, okay, well, how do I realize this? And then I let things flow from there. And then sometimes, you might go in a certain direction and then realize, well, nope, that's not going to be quite where I want it. But, let's move it over this way, or this isn't quite working. What if we do this kind of thing? And I'm also a risk taker, but I'm a calculated risk taker.
Okay.
I think it's really great to take risks because, nothing ventured, nothing gained. But, there is that time span, like we only have 2 restaurants and that's all the restaurants I'm going to have in my lifetime. But there is that time span where so many people would open a concept and then, want to become the next McDonald's and then start opening many more, all really quickly. And I think, and then 2008 happened and a lot of places, they didn't make it because they just overexpanded very quickly. But so I'm the type of person where it's like, I kind of go at a pace that I want to be stable. I want to be around. A lot of restaurants don't really last very long. Some of them don't even make it to a year these days. They come and go so quickly. So to me, it was, it's important to kind of consider, okay, what's the long game? What do I want and how do I kind of, float the boat in that direction?
Yeah, no, I mean, the fact that you take calculated risks that aligns with what I'm seeing, and that you've done all of these things that are outside of the norm for a restaurant, but they are successful. And it sounds like you've slowly built them and done them over the years.
Slowly. And then, to really make sure that we are connected with our community. That's the only way you stay in business is if you really have those connections, good connections, not just this is the new thing, I'm checking it out, and then, people don't come back. It's like you want to provide a space that people enjoy enough to come back to.
And I think you have.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So where can people go to learn more about your restaurants?
Well, you can check our website out, www.uncommonground.com. And if you're really interested in finding out like music and art and happenings and so on, please register your email with us so that you can find out about all the stuff coming up, including the farm dinner that will be happening on August 28th.
Oh, and including my artwork, which is
And your artwork.
which is going to be January 2021.
Yes.
So you're
Can you believe I'm already planning into 2021?
I know. Well, I got to get
Yikes.
going. I got to
But
get.
that's the system. I developed a system for art booking, and it's efficient. And now I won't have to worry about it until mid 2020 again.
Well, this means that my work better be really, really good.
That's right. I've given you lots of time to plan.
If I have over a year to prepare these paintings, they are going to be amazing.
Well, it's going to be like your gallery. It's just going to be a big space with just your art.
I
So,
know.
yeah,
I'm really,
take advantage of it.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much. This was amazing.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. My name is Ricky McGuckran, and you have been listening to Eager to Know, the podcast. If you haven't already, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join me next week for another Eager to Know podcast.